Sunlight fell, it reminded me that life can be so gracious sometimes. And I felt...
Alright, welcome to Gravesend. So, Gravesend is a place that always comes up on these little surveys of like the worst places to live. It has done for a few decades. And I've even had some trouble on nights out and stuff here. So I totally understand why. Now I chose Gravesend because there's an interesting, what turns out to be somewhat of a myth, or at least there's a lot of contention around the idea that it's called Gravesend because of the plague, the bubonic plague. And supposedly the story goes that to keep it out of, to keep the spread out of London, they would send the bodies and they would bury them here. Hence the name Gravesend. But when I actually started researching the origins of the name, actually I found out something different. And the origins of the name come from a book called the Domesday Book, or Domesday, under order of William the Conqueror. And it was a massive survey of all the lands, basically. Now it used to be called Gravesham, right? And then that translated to Gravesham, and then Gravesend. I believe it sort of just means Lord of the Manor, or place of the bailiff, in Old Middle English. And the term Gravesend can be found well before the plague. So it can't be true. Some people agree, some people don't. So behind me is the oldest surviving cast iron pier. I'm not going to lie to you, it's relatively underwhelming. You can get the ferry to Tilbury from there. But what is cool, that I wasn't actually expecting to find, is this little gaff over here. This is called the Three Doors, and apparently it's over 500 years old. And Charles Dickens had a second home here in Gravesend, and I believe he used to drink in it. So, something you might not know about Gravesend is that it's actually the resting place of Pocahontas. Yep, that's right, that Disney princess. She obviously was a real person. There you go. Now you all should know the Disney version of Pocahontas, and unfortunately again it's one of those stories that is so rife with contention, and so many historians disagree on the real story, which intrigues me. Gravesend as a whole has quite a lot of historians arguing with each other, but this is the resting place of Pocahontas. But this place is called St George's Church. Now supposedly it's an unmarked grave, that's why there's a statue there, because there was actually a fire many centuries ago and the church was rebuilt. I think it might have been called St John's before, I'm not too sure, I can't really remember. Pocahontas' real name is Mateica, and Pocahontas was a nickname that was adopted later in her life that I believe translates to the playful one. Assuming that's what she was like as a child. And she was from the tribe, the Powhatans, or the Powhatans, I think is how you pronounce it. They were a Native American tribe that inhabited what is now known as Virginia. And as you may recognise the Disney story of John Smith, that couldn't have happened for various reasons. If you look at lots of different sources, it will state that children weren't allowed to be present in ritualistic tribal practices and stuff like that. So it's all largely bollocks from John Smith, but stuff like this is really, really hard to delineate and find out what is really true. If you look at lots of different sources, largely no one really knows what happened. I do believe though that there was foul play involved with this unfortunate teenage girl. It's actually written in John Smith's own book. They kidnapped her because this was during the Anglo-Powhatan War, and she was the daughter of the chief of the Powhatan tribe. So they took her and she fell pregnant, right? She was a teenage girl. So anyway, I believe, to cover this up, they took her to England and she married a geezer called Thomas Rolfe, I think is how you pronounce it. He was a tobacconist, and they converted her to Christianity. They changed her name to Rebecca. They even sort of made it look like she was flirting with royalty and stuff. But then, once she started learning English, she started largely telling the truth. And once she found out what John Smith had wrote, she started openly, publicly saying, no, this isn't what happened. And then basically, while she was on a ship, sorry, someone's just popping balloons behind me. Apparently she fell ill on a ship, and Gravesend was where she died. So if she was such royalty, I find it strange that she was given like a pauper's burial, apparently in an unmarked grave. All a bit strange to me. So the one thing I'll never do is defend atrocities. I also won't apologise for them, because it's nothing to do with my current principles or who I am. Just like I won't say sorry for slavery, because it had nothing to do with me. I love English history, I love British history, and really it's up to you to discern and decipher what were atrocities and what weren't. I think it's important to have a view straight down the middle, because I think this was rather an atrocity. I think she was treated disastrously, and I think there was a bit of a cover-up. That's my discernment. It's just a bit weird that she's buried in a unremarkable town in Kent. See ya. Apparently this is modern art.